God, this place is dusty. I need to come back here more often. Is that where I left my notes? Okay. We're back. Welcome, lads and ladies, to Ordo Historia, where I show you the history of Warhammer 40k lines up spectacularly with the real world. Today, we're going to be addressing our first Primarch, and much to the surprise of many of you, it's going to be the Khan. We could talk about Horus's abilities for speechcraft and how they could be comparable to Julius Caesar. We could even talk about Roboutte Gilman, who has interesting traits with Justinian the Great of Byzantium, but I think the best place to start is with Jaghatai Khan. But you're familiar with the structure so far, so we're going to talk about the real-world parallel, the 40k version, and then we're going to compare and contrast. Genghis Khan is a mysterious figure, the reason being we don't know a lot about him, and this is where we can also conclude a lot of the romanticization of him, along with having a lot of time passed based off his atrocities, adds on to that factor. Even his birth has been debated, and it's only been narrowed down between the years of 1155 and 1167 AD as Temujin. Temujin was born in the Borjigin clan as the chief's eldest son. They lived on the steppe, which was an incredibly harsh environment, and that harshness was instilled into Temujin because he had killed a half-brother of his when he was only 13 because he stole a fish from him right after he pulled it out of a stream. When he reached 15, his family was attacked by the Merkit tribe, a group who had once followed Temujin's father but had disbanded after he was poisoned to death by the Tatars. They put a large wooden yoke around Temujin's neck like an ox to keep him from escaping or easily harming anyone. Still, somehow, he overpowered his guard and hid in the nearby hills while the Merkit tribe chased after him. He then formed a cunning plan which, to be frank, was audacious and insane. Temujin knew he couldn't escape with his heavy yoke killing him, so he snuck into the tent of the sentry that day and simply told him if the sentry didn't comply, he was going to tell the rest of the Merkit tribe the sentry had seen him and let him get away. But if the sentry helped him get the yoke off Temujin and gave him a horse to flee on, the sentry's life would be spared. Exhausted, restrained by the yoke, and malnourished, Temujin was playing with people's lives for his own survival before he even reached adulthood. By 1206, he had conquered and united the Merkits, the Tatars, and the Naimans, along with the Karamites, and gave himself the title of Genghis Khan. While the conquering of the first two tribes were personal, Genghis Khan is quoted that, "To attack your neighbors and come away with their horses and their women. There is no greater joy in life." This shows you how he was assembling the building blocks to becoming a great conqueror, and then the Khan that we all know today eventually would follow shortly after. Let's address the way he fought in combat though, because you're going to see a little bit of a difference later. Genghis Khan would take an overwhelming number of troops to several tribes and villages and utterly destroy them. Then he would return to the neighboring villages and have them surrender under him. If anyone would fight him, he would take the conquered slaves and death march them in front of their horseback archers and have them absorb incoming attacks while their archers would rotate, constantly firing off arrows in a barrage. This was a common tactic that was used and also played into the psychological peril he would put the people into. Now that I've set the table for the inspiration behind Jaghatai Khan, let's dive into the Primarch himself. Jaghatai Khan was the Primarch and leader of the White Scars who was jettisoned to chogoris by Erda, who realized the Emperor was insane, while she was simultaneously taken advantage of by the forces of chaos who wished to have their chance to corrupt the Primarchs outside of the Emperor's reach. The Khan was the 15th Primarch found in 865.M30 on the planet of Chogoris and was an outsider to his brothers. He had conquered his planet and unified all the tribes under his banner, but had this hawkish nature amongst his brothers that very few could look through. The reason for this was, in the Borda set, Fulgrim was originally supposed to land at Chogoris, and Khan in Chemos. The entity isn't named, but I hypothesize it was Kekarak, the Laughing God's doing throughout the ebook, since they're the only other god out there with that type of power and interest that is not Thingish. For a decent portion of the Horus heresy, the Khan spends his time watching and learning both traitor and loyalist brothers before he takes a side because he was one of the few Primarchs who wasn't enamored with the Emperor. In the self-titled book in the Horus Heresy series, we note the Khan views the Emperor originally as this tyrant who was too strong to initially overcome and could rally and unite all of humanity. This was an overarching goal of the Khan anyways, so it was something he wanted to happen. After meeting with Mortarion, by some subtle influence of the Alpha Legion leaving some breadcrumbs for him to follow, the Khan learns of the heresy, who is joined, and why. Ultimately, he doesn't pick a side, but it can be seen he's rather unimpressed with the heresy and how Mortarion wants to make a third group to get away from his other brothers. It wasn't until he had joined with the Space Wolves when Rogal Dorn had called back all loyalist Primarchs that he slipped away and joined alongside the Blood Angels and their Primarch Sanguinius to be the 3, technically 4, Primarchs on Terra. And then, as we all know, he gets on a space bike and yeets himself into the warp to get some Dark Elf booty, never to be seen again. So, let's compare and contrast. They are both Asian mounted warriors named Khan. That's it. We could take the quote from the Captain of the White Scars who talks about their battle doctrine being about administering thousands of cuts as a way they fight differently from the Sons of Horus, and apply it to the rotating archers that were used to if you want. But it isn't mentioned again, and later in the series, their doctrine of combat is shown to be a loud crash of bikes deep into the flank, and then they retreat with a sweep of their blades again on the fallback. Not to mention, Genghis was mostly an archery-based army, while Jaghatai was mostly a melee army. Legitimately, if you look at the numbers, Genghis Khan was around, quarter to a half of his army was horseback archers because maneuverability and range beats a phalanx. It's just the way it goes. You need pike and shot. I don't even think they had pike and shot regularly available then. Editor me will fact check that with a little note here. The main thing to note here is their similarities are so minimal. I can make the argument that the bike hero from One Punch Man has more in common with the Primarch than Genghis friggin' Khan. At most, they are a surface level comparison with not so skin deep connections between them. I wish there was something meaningful here, but there isn't. There was even a close friend, and to some sources, lover of Temujin named Jamuka, who then betrayed the Khan for sticking with the old ways and tradition. We didn't get that in Horus Heresy like with the Emperor and Horus, or Luther and the Lion. You could even argue with the way Genghis Khan dealt with that betrayal, conquered the steppe, and even created a strong logistical system. By the way, shout out to Jack Mandeville for this fun episode on the guy. He's more in line with Gilman than Jaghatai Khan. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you give it a like, subscribe, and a hype. I have a goal to try to make a video every month. I'm giggling as I read the script because I made this script like 6 months ago. We'll find out if it shakes out that way. Either way, I have a few video ideas that I still want to work on, so I hope you know they're becoming. Just, you know. They'll be coming, I swear. Goodbye!